You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle Podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of ZESTY Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Hello, it is Alex. I am here for day 12 of our Flowing with Your Cycle series. Grab the companion guide over at zestyginger.com/flow. And today we are going to be talking all about comfort zones. And that's been the name of the game in some sort of way in phase 2 the whole time. But today we're going to be talking about it from a slightly different way. All right, so comfort zones, super handy, also super easy to, stay in. And then as we stay in there, we get frustrated about why we're not getting what we want. And that is, what happens. Sometimes we see this in the way that people don't expect, right? Sometimes comfort zones looks like, you don't do the things that you say you want to do, like eat healthy or move your body, that kind of thing. We go to sleep on time. And part of that is that sometimes our comfort zone is to keep doing something that we previously decided we needed to keep doing, and we have anxieties about no longer doing it. So a big thing that we see over and over is kind of obsession about food. And a lot of people feel like if I could just get my food perfect and figure that part out, my health would just be better. And it's a really common misconception because essentially out of everything that you are, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, food then, as you can imagine, is an important portion of that. But that is by no means the majority of who we are, right? We eat, and yes, we are fueled by that, and yes, our body is impacted by that greatly, and it's still not the biggest thing, right? Because you see a lot of people, it's all organic, it's all homemade, and they're so stressed out, and they hate all of it so much that then there's a lot of stress and anxiety and misery around it. And a lot of times the people doing that, and Megan and I were in that category, absolutely, then you're constantly sort of beating yourself up for the imperfections that you inject into that. And so then it becomes like, well, if I would just stop doing this, then it would be perfect. And if it was perfect, then I would feel better. And, honestly, if it's not working for you in the way that it just feels good and fits into your life, it's a rough way to go. And so that's why we're going to talk about that. And that can apply for anything. Sometimes, with business comfort zones I've talked about before, Megan and I used to just really love creating content. And I love that we have a bunch of content. It's great. It's cool. And sitting in our homes quietly creating content kind of meant that was our comfort zone, where we were not getting the word out about what we actually did, and it was kind of just creating content into a vacuum. And so it doesn't have to be something bad that you are doing for it to be a comfort zone. Sometimes it's something we absolutely want to retain, right? Like I'm doing the podcast, I make content, but that is no longer kind of the playing safe strategy that I have. That's like, I'm not going to reach out to that person. Let me just record another podcast episode. I had to go outside of my comfort zone for that, and then also turn on and say, but I still want to participate in this activity. I'm going to change my relationship to it. And that really has moved the needle a lot. And this is part of why it's part of the massive action phase, doing this sort of thinking, And because our impact became more, it became even more fun to create the content, because all of a sudden now we were interacting with so many other women and getting that feedback and really creating for what we were seeing and what we were getting asked about and all the questions that you have. That kind of stuff made it so much more fun, right? And so this stuff is really, really interesting to look at and can not only get us to our goals, but get there in a way that we feel joyful about, rather than something that we're like, oh, okay, I guess I cook now and then do dishes for another 45 minutes, and dang it, why is my health still not good? That's not really where we want to go. The other aspect of this is sometimes as we really prioritize the things that move the needle forward, it's natural that we let go of some of the other tasks that we are doing completely, if that's the case. Sometimes what happens is that we continue doing things and then resentment builds, especially if it has to do with someone else, and that's why we're doing it. And then as the resentment builds, it starts to snowball, right? Because if you're like, I've identified the thing that's going to move me forward, and I'm stuck doing this for you because of XYZ or whatever the setup is, that the discrepancy between you living an aligned life and you doing stuff for others that don't advance you forward, most people are not okay with that, right? That's where really it rubs up against her, like, I didn't come here to do this. This is not helping me. And dissatisfaction is kind of like a symptom of ourselves communicating to us, like, this is not what I want to be doing. I do not feel good. And so that's the GPS being like, go that way. This is not for you, go that way. And so there's an activity that Megan and I super love coming back to every so often, especially in this phase. It's not every single time we hit this phase, but this is certainly something that we circle back around to, and it's called quit, batch, or delegate. Right. So what this is about, you'll need probably 30 to 60 minutes for this, especially the first time. It gets a little faster as you go. But step number one for this is creating a list of tasks, events, people, locations that you go to. I'm applying it broadly so that whatever situation that you're dealing with, it can apply. So any of those that you feel deplete you when you do them, right? You may even be really good at some of these things. And when we're really good at something, we tend to be like, well, I should do it, right? However, just because we're really good at something doesn't mean it doesn't drain our energy in a way that keeps us from stepping into more of that makes us feel good and that we become good at also, right? Because if we're so busy doing the things that we're good at but deplete us, oftentimes we just don't have the capacity to be like, oh, let me sit and dream, right? Like when you are depleted, you're like, just let me finish this and I will get into bed and I will zone out to some TV, have a glass of wine, and I will be done, right? It's defeating, not propelling. And that's why it's so important to bring a sense of neutrality around it so that we can really have a fair assessment of like, how does that make me feel and what is it that's going on? Because as I free myself, that's more power that I have to apply to the massive action, right? And that's the goal. How do I allow myself to be successful at whatever it is that I'm doing? And for that's kind of environment and energy management, which when you have extra energy at this point of the cycle, it's then important to conscientiously direct it into where we want to go and not just be spinning our wheels. That feels really bad. Okay? So first you're just going to make the list, right? Anything that you feel depletes you. It could be like, just hate grocery shopping, really hate doing the dishes, or I feel like I'm always doing laundry, or, fill in the blank. You just make the list, whatever comes out, comes out. Then it's up to you. You're going to take another piece of paper, and across the top, you're going to put 3 columns. Quit, batch, or delegate. You could put delegate/hire. Okay. And then you're going to look at the list that you created that was just a hodgepodge of everything. And one by one, this is an invitation to consider, if you had to pick one of the columns to put it in, where would you put it in? There are some things that are very naturally, you're going to just jive with. I'm not going to do that anymore. I have done it. Maybe it worked for me in the past. I'm just not there anymore. I'm not going to do it. So just a small example of this is when this is probably a couple of years ago actually, but Megan and I did this activity, and one of the things, it was around the holidays, and Megan was like, for this point in my life where I am, she's like, I'm just not sure I want to go through the hassle of sending a Christmas card. And again, this is a small example, but it's one of those things that she was like, I've always just kind of sent those out, and then we had to get the pictures, and then we had to figure out which format we wanted to get, and then have them printed, and then put the names on the envelopes, and then send them out and go to the post office. And she was like, actually, it's not to say that I have to quit them forever, but just right now, I'm not in a place to want to do that, and that feels expansive to my energy, right? So it was just this big aha moment where I remember her talking to me and being like, wow, this is such a novel thing for someone who has kind of forced herself to do certain things. She became a successful engineer, became an amazing FDN, right? Like, she's been very high functioning for her whole life, and a lot of times we're like, I didn't even realize I could just not do that, possibly forever, possibly for a little while. I guess I'll decide, because I can always do this later, and just kind of like put things back into my life if that's what it is. Sometimes that's also quitting certain expectations. So, one of the things I put on mine is that I was really kind of constantly depleted by negative self-talk. Right, and kind of once I identified that as something that really depleted my energy, it was something that I put on the quit list. And then, because I was committed to that, I began to set in motion the massive action steps that got me better and better at not prioritizing the negative self-talk, right? All of this stuff is still in motion. Some things, the small things, are easy. Some of the bigger things take a little longer. Some of the things we will, kind of manage for a period of our lives. Whatever it looks like, though, it is totally okay. You don't need my permission, but I'm going to say it anyways, because I think a lot of us feel guilt and shame around it, is if you don't like it, if it's not improving your life, if it was just something you did because your mom was like, that's how you have to raise kids, or that's how you're a good wife, or that's, what is expected of you in society. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. End of story, right? You don't even need to explain it to anybody, as long as you are clear on it. So check out, the things that would go in the quit category, in the quit column, and then you can mark those off your list. Then the second one is batch. Sometimes we have activities that we need to do, or, it's always a choice. This is the category of like potentially checking emails, or answering DMs, or doing laundry, or cooking, right? They're activities that can be depleting for us, and we still choose to include them in our life. And in order to minimize the impact of the depletion, we can start to batch them. So generally, I do not have my email set to constantly be uploading, right? It's like when I check it, then it gets uploaded. And I usually check it often enough that it's not a problem, right? That I've done that. Now, there have been times where I took that off because of whatever was happening, but then that's how it goes. That way I can batch them and I'm not just getting constantly interrupted by other people's to-do list for me, right? Most emails are like other people's agendas in some way or another. And then same with certain activities around the house that I still want to do. So things like cleaning, certain activities of that. And that's where in one chunk of time that I have, they all get done, and then I put something that repletes my energy after it. It's because whether we continue to batch or at some point we delegate or quit it, that can happen later at any given time. So, for example, I batched a lot of the, practical home taking care of things when I was in residency and fellowship, and especially residency because, you've probably seen like Scrubs or Grey's Anatomy enough and things, or know people that residents don't make a lot of money. So, and we have high school loans. And so at that point, it really came down to batching. And then as things changed over time, then some things just straight up fell off where I was like, yeah, I really don't know why I'm doing that. I'm not getting that much value for the effort and the energetic hit that I'm taking to do it. And so with time, it just naturally fell away. And then other things went into the third column, which is delegating or hiring out. And so as things shift, then the reassessment can happen. And so just keep in mind, you're not locked into this. This is just what you can do now with what you have going on in whatever way that is. Right? And then the third column, a lot of times the things that are left go into the delegate or hire out category. Sometimes when we get to the third one, we're like, ooh, that one doesn't fit there too. And sometimes we can go back and put them in the other two columns. Sometimes those things can just remain the way they are. So that's kind of the fourth option. But a lot of times it helps to do the first two columns and then go back to it because it's a little more apparent that way. When you're sitting and looking at it, you're like, yeah, I do kind of hate doing all of these things. But, by the time you get to the third column, you say, oh, there's 5 left and one of them just I really don't want to delegate. You can make the choice to just keep doing it the way that you're doing it. Oftentimes, if that's the case, I will do that and lump it together or pair it up with something that I do really like doing. Right, so that is kind of the fourth column that isn't on the sheet, but essentially anything that remains, that's what I do with. And then the delegate, you can start to put things in that column and seeing what would need to happen next to make that happen. So sometimes it's a matter of delegating tasks to your kids or your partner or your friend. This is where Megan and I sometimes will, if there are shared tasks that need to happen, and we do this with our partners as well, is you're like, this is what needs to happen. Which ones do you like doing more? Right? So sometimes some things that's on our delegate list and are on our partners. And so, Megan's delegate list and I have mine, and she's like, oh hey, I don't really mind that one, and I look at hers and I'm like, I don't mind that one. We just swap them. So now they're delegated and you're done. So someone's doing it, it's getting done, things are moving forward, but it's not you doing it. And then with partners, if there isn't something that you're swapping for, that the delegation can still happen. Oftentimes we do ask, like, is there something that we can do, even if it's not a trade like that? Is there something that I can take off your plate if it fits? Sometimes relationships can be a little imbalanced, and so one person takes on more, in which case those people are most likely then to say, well, what can I take off your plate? And you can offer that if you want to, you feel up for it, you are in the place to make that happen. And still, you can also just say, I need this off my plate because there's just too much here. And then, I just need you to do it. Is this something that can happen? And if not, this is where sometimes hiring out, if that's available to you, can also happen just the way that it is. So now I essentially was batching things like cleaning the home, and then eventually I got to the point where I hired that out for part of it so that I could free my time and space up. And I don't think that I think that sometimes the people make it seem like the goal is to like hire out everything, and then it brings this feeling of like, oh, but I'm not in the financial place for that, but like it's because my business isn't going that well, and gosh, I'm a failure, or whatever it is, or like I didn't go to school and now I can't do this, and I don't have, there's just a lot of thoughts that can be and beliefs that can be interjected there. And so if you do want to delegate and hire out, cool, that you're done. If you have things around there, though, that's not going to be the answer for everybody, right? That's just some of us are not going to do that as much as other people, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Right? So no judgment on however the list shakes out, but check that out and see how that feels to you, because this is really in the best interest of getting out of comfort zones that do not serve us at any given time. Okay. This episode then is going to be a little bit different in that I have another idea for you when it comes to comfort zones. Another way to become more comfortable with the discomfort of leaving that zone is that we can have controlled opportunities to get outside of our comfort zone on a topic that does not trigger or cause deep-seated emotions around, right? So if our big thing is feeling unworthy, and you're trying to start a business and you're just terrified of going on lives or camera or podcast interviews because you're like, who am I to, be an expert? Who am I to be there? Who am I to be listened to? That may not be the topic to do a controlled experiment around. Sometimes it is, because we can break it down into bite-sized sections, right? You're like, I'm just going to do a live for 3 minutes. I'm going to write out exactly what I'm going to say. I'm going to make myself feel good. Whatever that is, for some of us, it's going to be like, oh, you do your hair, you put on makeup, you put on clothes that you feel really good in. Now you're kind of in your power. Sometimes that's like, I don't care what I look like. What I care about is, I'm worried about X, Y, Z. So then beforehand, that's more like, I'm going to go get myself an amazing chai latte. Or that's like Megan's thing. I'm gonna gift myself a chai latte. I'm gonna enjoy drinking it. I'm gonna walk over there to get it. I'm gonna enjoy the sunshine on my way there, just getting into a really good state, and then making it bite-sized. So if that's your deal, cool, absolutely. But if you find that that idea is so unsettling to you, it takes you out of your comfort zone too much, just pick a different topic. We are often believing that, unless we do that thing that's like the hardest part, that we're not making movements, but practicing on things that we don't feel emotional charge about quite as much is also telling our brain, I can do this. I can do, like one of Megan's mantras is, I can do hard things. And whereas like that for me doesn't resonate quite as much, right? So we can have our own choices about what it is, but essentially, as we practice with bite-sized and kind of less charged things, then we begin to reaffirm to ourselves that we will make the choice to grow and expand, and we will do it in a way that respects our own experience. And that part's very important, because if we're always like, hey brain, I'm gonna make you power through, you're piece of crap and you always mess things up, like you're gonna do it this time. Like, if you talk to your friend, if I ever said that to Megan, she would look at me like I was growing a third head, right? I would never, ever, ever do that. And yet we tend to approach ourselves like that, and it does not, no one feels good being talked to about that. And if you feel like crap about yourself, where's the motivation? Right? Why are you going to do the hard thing if you don't deserve it, or if you're not good enough for it, or if you're just constantly berating yourself? So wherever your set point is at any given time, and it will change as you go cycle by cycle, but doing a small activity that pushes you outside of your comfort zone can be really helpful as you go and repeat this process. Now that you have 13 times in a year to be in that space and really get into that mode. So what does this look like? It can be comfort zone, like, maybe you don't like making phone calls, but you need to call the insurance company. Right? Just being like, all right, today's the day I'm going to do that. What do I need to do beforehand to get myself into this headspace to do that? Maybe you'll reach a new milestone on something you're already working on, like exercise, right? Doing a couple more reps that push, safely, obviously, but that push you a little bit further. Maybe you are walking and you're like, I'm going to do another mile today, pushing it like that. Maybe it's boundaries. So you're working on setting boundaries with people, and you're like, today's the day I'm going to tell so-and-so that really does not work for me, right? And it's a small topic, so it's not too scary. I'm just going to ask for what I need and feel really good about it. So they're feeling really good about it. That part sounds like it would be kind of like arbitrary, that you would just feel good about it because you did something hard. A lot of times what happens, unfortunately, is that we do it, and the part of getting out of your comfort zone kicks up a bunch of doubts and ways that we think about ourselves, and kind of highlights that. My personal antidote to that kind of thing is that once I do it, I journal about, like, I do a celebration journaling session. And this, if you're new to this, it can feel a little bit funny, but you're basically just expressing appreciation for yourself through journaling, right? So you're like, I'm feeling really proud of myself for doing this hard thing. And you can use the opportunity to voice any concerns that are coming up, because they're going to lead you to the next place where you can, work on and focus. So you're like, even though I felt like setting that boundary, I'm worried that that person is going to respond with XYZ. I am really proud of myself because I've been working on boundaries for a while, and this was an opportunity to do that, and I actually did it. And again, you just want to acknowledge whatever the good was. So you're like, even though I cried my eyes out as I was telling them they made me upset, I'm so proud of myself that I did that anyways. Right? Or I'm really proud of myself that this is the work that I'm doing, and I've made strides on boundaries. I am now more communicative and expressive to the people around me, and I can see that as I continue to do that, I am making progress in this regard. You can even just show appreciation for thoughts that you have. So it doesn't have to be something that has physically already happened in your life. You can just be like, I set that boundary. Part of my brain fears that are conditioned in is that that person's going to leave me because, they're going to be unhappy. And now I gave them an opportunity to peace out. That seems to be a common one, right? Even just having the thought of and journaling it out, I am grateful that I believe I deserve to have boundaries enough that if someone cannot respect, loving boundaries that I set, I'm okay with, or I am starting to be okay with the idea of really having people in my life that do respect me and do listen to my boundaries and want to meet my needs the same way that I meet their needs. I mean, that's just a thought you have. That doesn't mean you have to blow up the relationship right now. It doesn't mean that you have to live a new life all of a sudden. It doesn't mean any of that. You're just sort of acknowledging the advancements that you're making, even if it's in your own mind, and being really grateful to yourself about that. It's just, I'm doing this with love, because this is what I need. And then just reinforcing that idea. Right? So really powerful way to follow up, doing things that get you out of your comfort zone. Just really express love for yourself. And if journaling's not your thing, you can obviously do it in a lot of different ways. But it really helps to get it out somehow. You could do kind of an audio message for yourself. You could share that with a friend if you're comfortable. It's nice to have friends that are like, yeah, you should love on yourself. Like a lot of us feel like, oh, well, I'm not going to call someone and talk about how great I am, but why not? Why is that so bad? You are doing the things that improve your life, and we already talked about in this series how much we are not alone in our worlds, right? So what we do for ourselves, we cause an upshift for the entire world, and so maybe let's normalize that. But if you don't have that, that's journal and audio and whatever it is that you want to do for it, but just actually take the time to appreciate any small thing that you did that really made you feel like, all right, comfort zones, I can live in some of mine, and others I choose to bust out of. It doesn't have to be all of them. I'm going to finish up this episode with this concept of comfort zones, and that sometimes we really hate our comfort zones and we want to get out of it. So we had a coach Lisa. She is Lisa Carpenter. If you don't listen to her podcast or haven't found her yet, she's amazing. And one of the things that she pointed out to me when I was talking about this is she's like, all right, so you're in your comfort zone, and the perimeter of this comfort zone's on fire because you literally know that this situation is not working for you, but it's comfortable being in it, right? She's like, that ring of fire is going to come towards you, right? You can either choose to walk through it and get out of that. You're going to get a little cinched. Or you can stand there and wait for the fire to come to you and keep standing there, right? Either way, you get a little burned, and that's the discomfort of leaving the comfort zone. But she was like, which one would you pick? And I obviously said, I'd really rather just make the decision to go through the fire and get out of that than stand there and just, get burned in the comfort zone that doesn't actually work for me. So something to ponder as you're doing this kind of work, what drives with you on that? What are you getting from that comfort zone, and is it one that is actually, to the point where it's caught fire and something's going to give one way or another, right? All right, so that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Really, really appreciate you. I say that every time because it's absolutely true. All right, so I will catch you later. Have a great day.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.